Okay, welcome to Devlog 3. In this video, I'm primarily focusing on player character and creating a more complete animation set for both the unarmed combat and the sword and shield states. When I first started thinking about replacing and improving the animations, it kind of also raised a design question, like how many mechanics from my reference games do I actually want to bring into Ascension? One feature I know I eventually want is the ability for the player to fly. However, flying introduces another important technical challenge. The controls a player needs while standing on the ground are not necessarily the same controls they need while moving through the air. So with that realization, the priority kind of changed. Before expanding the animation system, I decided that I needed a more modular input system, one that would allow me to dynamically add the inputs a player needs and remove the ones that are no longer relevant to their current state. The solution I came across was using gameplay tags to organize and manage multiple input mapping contexts. So instead of placing every possible input inside one massive mapping context, the system is now additive. I have a default input mapping context that contains the core inputs used across most player states, and then so these are the controls that generally remain available regardless of what the player is doing. And then on top of that, I can activate additional mapping contexts for specific situations. For example, I can have one context for the ground movement, another for flying, and another for navigating menus or controlling the user interface. This also allows me to redefine what an input does depending on the player's current state. Take the jump for an example. Like when the player is on the ground, jumping is obviously important. However, when the player is flying, a traditional jump is no longer useful. And so instead of having that dead button, we could repurpose it to make the player ascend or do some other flight related action. And so with this system, I can change the functionality of an input without permanently binding the key to one specific action, and that would give me a much cleaner foundation for adding new movement states or combat stances, menus, or vehicles or other gameplay systems in the future. So pretty happy with how this came out. So now I can return to the main focus of this video, which was improving the player's unarmed and sword and shield animation sets. Alright, so for animations, I'm no artist, so I had to look towards Fab, and I came across 9CG, which has a pretty complete RPG animation set, and so I decided to just pick up the fighter for now to see how that goes. And this is what I came up with. I got the animations incorporated, the idle, the jump, and even sprinting. So didn't have that before. As far as combat goes, there's quite a few animations that had like a quick 1-2 jab, and I couldn't really incorporate those at this time because of the way my melee trace worked. But there was quite a few other animations I could choose from. So, this is the combination I came up with for a light attack. And I think it came out pretty good, a little way more professional than I had before. And yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. However, there is a glaring issue with this animation pack, which is it showed the deficiencies I have with how my character is rigged up. So like the hand is all crumpled up, the face is twisted, the waist is skinny. So I know there's going to be some tweaking involved here, but I think I'm not going to worry about it for now. I'm just going to push on and add in the sword and shield first, because I already had issues with my character model, like this cape. It's not really what I wanted originally, but it's, it was good for now. So anyway, I'll touch upon the armors and the character model later. I just want to get the infrastructure for the animation sets in, and then I could then maybe see where I go from there. But for the most part, these animations do the trick. I think they're better than what I had. I'm pretty happy with it. And like I said, I just need to fix the character model now. So anyway, I'm on to adding the sword and shield. Alright, so now I have the sword and shield animation pack all rigged up. The only regrettable thing is that the dodge animations that came with the pack weren't root motion, so I am just going to use the unarmed evade just so that it doesn't break my system. I don't have to rewrite any code or have Cloud rewrite any code. So yeah, so these are just the animations that I picked just quickly. I think as I go on, I will be maybe modifying it here and there. I'm not sure if this is going to be like, the final, but definitely just going to keep this as a placeholder for now. And with that, I will just move on to maybe fixing the abilities. Currently, you kind of have to be very precise with the shot. And there's a few different visual effects that I want to include as well, and maybe make another ability. So that's where I'm at, and on to the next. Okay, so it's been a few days since my last clip, and over the last few days I've just been working on a variety of things. I went back and tried to fix the character mesh so that's not clipping so much at the waist. And I did not modify anything for the face, but I think later on when I add the helmet and other equipment, I'll try to maybe fix the head mesh. But overall, I'm pretty happy with just the body. Yeah, I think it came out much better than it originally did. Okay, after refactoring the mesh, I decided to work on my skills. So the idea of Ascension was that you can have 12 skills at a time, and you would switch between the skills by just using the scroll wheel. So just like this. So here I made an additional 4 abilities. The first ability requires the player to have a sword on. And so it's really just to show that we can restrict the abilities to certain weapons and various stances. The next ability I made was to do a straight dash so you can close the distance on your enemies. And right now I'm not doing any damage when you did surge, but I think maybe in the future that would be pretty fun to do. And then the next one I made was a more gratifying energy beam. So it's just a massive Kamehameha type ability that pushes the enemy back and does a lot of damage while channeling. And finally, I made the ground impact. So just carrying on with the blue theme. Just wanted to have a little bit more variety as far as ground impacts. But yeah, so these are the 4 new abilities I made. I'm pretty happy with them for now, and I think that they will come in very handy when I create the mini boss here soon. So yeah. Okay, so after making the skills, I decided to make the other 2 combat stances, which is the ranged and magic. First started off with magic, and again, I'm no artist, so I decided to go over to Fab and pick up the mage animation pack, and while I was at it, I got the archer as well. So another $100 right there. And so I pretty much just used what I had as far as attacking. So melee, it uses a combo type abilities to do the damage. So I kind of just did the same thing for magic. So I got the animations all hooked up and decided to pick up some projectiles. And so this is now what I have. So it just does a quick projectile combo, and you can pretty much just chain all your other abilities with it. It can still dodge, and yeah, so I think as the game progresses, you have different staffs and it'll have different projectile types. So the current one is like an air staff, and that's the air projectile. And in the future we could have the water or dark themed or light, etc. like that. So it leaves the door open, I feel like, for the future. And then as far as range goes, I do have a bug in that I've equipped the bow, but the shield didn't disappear, so just gotta work on that. But aside from that, range works the same way as magic. You can just shoot your bow, do the little combo, still fire off abilities, and do the damage. So it's very basic. There's quite a bit of tweaking involved on this, but I think as I work through the mini boss and I start really diving deep into combat between the enemies and the player, I think that I'll be able to iron out these bugs. But yeah, that's the current state of the project. I'm hoping to implement the mini boss in the next devlog and also have the damage pop-ups as well, and then also fix any major issues along the way. And yeah, so thank you for watching and have a good one.